Ushering in Godzilla's 70th anniversary early, the kaiju film Godzilla Minus One premiered in Japan on November 1st, 2023, and was brought over to North America exactly 1 month later on December 1st. 2 days later, aka yesterday as of the time I am writing this review, I was fortunate enough to get to venture across town to my favorite local rundown theater and witness this 30th mainline installment of one of my favorite franchises on the big screen. A number of you have requested that I briefly pause work on my massive History of Red King video and share my thoughts on Toho's newest creature feature, and in this video that is just what I intend to do. How does Godzilla Minus One measure up to past entries in the Godzilla series? Well, prepare to hear the opinion not just of a massive Toku fan, but of a Toku Professor. Hello students, and thanks for tuning in. Let's jump right into this review with a spoiler-free section of the video, and then we'll talk some actual spoilers afterward. So we'll start out with a really basic question. Did I like the movie? Well, absolutely! It was fantastic! It's not without some flaws, but overall I loved it. I know it's a bit early and opinions change, but for now I'm pretty confident this film is up there in my top 5 Godzilla movies of all time, with features like Destroy All Monsters and KOTM, and I actually think it's way better than Shin Godzilla. There are two main points in my opinion that make this film such a gem. First off is the king of the monsters himself. Minus One Godzilla checks all the boxes most fans want. His Godzilla the Ride-like design looks really cool and rides the line between traditional and new quite well, finally breaking the trend of having really strange Godzillas like the Shin and Singular Point iterations. Also, he's got his distinct vengeful personality, is extremely powerful, and might just be the most terrifying iteration of the creature to ever appear on screen. He doesn't just amble about damaging things as he wanders, but actively seeks out individuals and attacks them. I do have two small complaints about Godzilla 2023 though. First one is that his motives throughout the film are very vague. It's hard to decipher what the monster actually wants. And the other is that the CGI quality for the Atomic Menace varies widely throughout the movie. There are some really great looking shots, don't get me wrong, but then there are others where Godzilla will suddenly move really fast and the jerkiness looks really unrealistic, or you'll get a close-up of the creature and the textures on his body look rather computer-generated. Overall, definitely serviceable CGI, but Toho unfortunately still has a lot of catching up to do with Hollywood in this department. Or maybe they can go with Tokusatsu for the next film. Just saying. One aspect of Godzilla in this movie that I feel neutral about is that his origin story here is touched on incredibly briefly. It's almost blink and you miss it. While I think many people know how Godzilla came to be the atomic monster that he is, I feel as though for new fans who don't know, this could lead to some confusion during the movie. That's why I'm taking a neutral stance on this issue. The way his origin is treated is perfectly fine for me and most Toku fans, but if you take your unfortunate non-Toku-loving friends to see this film, you might need to give them a bit of an explanation beforehand. And the other main aspect of the movie that elevates it for me is, believe it or not, the human characters. This film does a fantastic job of making you really care about these people, in a way that no past Godzilla movie I can think of does. I think it might be the only film in the franchise to make me feel emotional during a non-monster scene, and if you check the movie out, I think you'll know which part I'm referring to. Because of how spot-on the human stuff is in Minus One, combined of course with the amazing monster action, I think this may just be the best Japanese Godzilla movie to introduce new people to the franchise that has ever been released. One complaint I do have about the humans, though, that a family member pointed out to me and I agree with, is that their reaction to learning monsters exist isn't very realistic. It's almost as if in this universe, humanity had already had an encounter with a kaiju in the past. Which could be possible, I guess, because it didn't seem too hard for the characters to accept they're real. It's a small point, but still relevant. One more thing I'd like to mention before we get into spoilers is the setting during and after World War II, and some of the ideas that come with it are used quite well in my opinion. You'll see what I mean when you see it. Hey, why not go see it now? We're at the spoiler section now, so since you spoiler-free people have to leave, now is your chance. Or better yet, you could check out one of my many other Tokusatsu and Godzilla videos. Or you could just skip to the part of this video using the timestamps where I actually rate the movie, because that's spoiler-free. Whatever you decide to do, please be aware that spoilers are coming in 3, 2, 1, go! Wasn't the beginning of the movie great? When I mentioned before that Godzilla is at his scariest in this movie, it's this scene, I think, that really seals that deal. This beginning would have terrified me as a child. As for the unmutated Godzilla's design, I'm fine with it. It's definitely a little bit hunched over like 1998 Godzilla, but it doesn't offend me, especially since this isn't his final form. Would have been nice if they called him a Godzillasaurus at this point though, would have been a great callback. I sadly had this young version of Godzilla spoiled by a movie monster series figure I saw on eBay prior to seeing the movie, but thankfully I got to be surprised by the awesome third version of Godzilla in the movie. Wait, You're asking what third version? Well, why Meeple Godzilla, of course, the little creature who was used to demonstrate the Freon bubbles in the water tank and was on a bunch of the projector slides about taking on Godzilla. It's an education kaiju, and being the Toku Professor that I am, I love it. He looked something like this. Keep your eye out for him on your next watch. On a more serious note, not only was the beginning of the movie amazing, but the ending was fantastic as well. The entire movie, from the moment Shikishima fails to save his friends from Godzilla on Odo Island, I was pretty sure the movie was going to end by him doing something big to make up for his failure, and kept wondering the whole time if he would have to sacrifice his life or not. And this was still in the back of my mind by the time the final fight against Godzilla occurred. Would he die or not? And the movie must have realized I was wondering that because it toyed with me for much of the movie, and then it all culminated in him using the ejector seat at the end, and I felt so happy. I'd been upset with him prior to that, thinking he really was going to leave his daughter an orphan, but he managed to do the two things she needed at once, defeat Godzilla and stay alive to be a father for her. And then his reuniting with Noriko was just the icing on the cake. Definitely a touching scene that made me feel emotional. After everything this man went through, this moment really leaves you feeling so happy for the guy. Great end to a very hopeful movie. And then of course after that, we see Godzilla's basically still alive. Quite a predictable, somewhat eye-rolling shot, and it kind of undermines what Shikishima did. I'm not too bugged by it, but a tad bit annoyed. Does it point toward a possible sequel? I guess only time will tell. Also, I didn't see this in theaters, but apparently there were signs that Noriko had caught some kind of radiation sickness when she was shown in the hospital. For me, that's sad to hear, but doesn't ruin the happy ending, since she was assumed to be dead before. Hopefully she can fight off whatever she contracted. Since we've been jumping around the movie randomly, let's talk about Godzilla's attack of Ginza. This scene for the most part was really great, though the whole Noriko hanging onto the pole in the train as Godzilla held it felt very, for lack of a better term, movie-ish. I'll give it a pass though, because it was a fun scene that gave me great roller coaster vibes. Godzilla swimming after the boat earlier in the movie was also good, though it really felt like he should have been able to catch them more easily, especially since he was able to rocket over to the battleship right after chasing them and attacked it in no time. The team of mind searchers that Shikishima worked with was a likable bunch. No complaints from me. Also, the young man who gets the broken arm was actually played by the same guy who played Gokai Blue in Kaizoku Sentai Gokaiger, and I couldn't help but wonder when I saw him arrive with the fleet of tugboats near the end if the arm-waving motion he did was a reference to this Super Sentai show. It seemed very much like something Gokai Blue would do. Oh yeah, the tugboats. How did they attach to the big ships so fast? And why did Gokai Blue think to bring tugboats anyway? And how did he get so many, and why did they arrive at just the right time? Yeah, the tugboats were confusing. The final battle against Godzilla was overall okay, in my opinion. It was definitely predictable that Plan A would fail since they had a Plan B, and it was certainly a weird choice to send Godzilla flying toward the surface with rubber rafts. Also, the movie lagged a little when they were coming up with this final plan, and Shikishima's insistence that Tachibana had to be the one to repair the plane didn't make that much sense, to me anyway. But the end wasn't that bad, and that constant wondering of what would happen to Shikishima keeps you engaged throughout. I liked the scenes where the Shinden would fly past Godzilla, as well as seeing Godzilla emerge from the sea after being crushed by the water pressure. The last thing I should probably cover is the music. To tell the truth, I didn't really notice the music on my first watch, other than of course when Godzilla's theme would play, which I guess is probably a good thing. It was probably making me feel the way I was supposed to in the back of my head. I'll have to pay more attention to it on my next watch. And yeah, those were some, not all, but some of my thoughts on Godzilla Minus One. Maybe I'll do another review in the future once I've had more time to think about it, or even do some other reviews. Guess I'll see how this one does for now. Overall, I think I'd give the movie a 9 out of 10 for the plot, an 8 out of 10 for its use of Godzilla, and if I score the special effects out of 5, I'd give it a 4, since it's great by Japanese movie standards, but a little lacking in some areas by Hollywood standards. This new scoring system I just invented gives us an overall score of 21 out of 25, which sounds pretty high to me, and it should be, because as of right now, this is one of my favorite Godzilla movies of all time. That's gonna wrap things up for me. If you liked this video, please like, subscribe, and comment, and take a peek at all the kaiju toys I've got for sale on eBay by clicking the link in the description. I'm offering a special deal until Christmas on eBay, where if you order $40 or more worth of stuff and request a handwritten message, either written by I, the Toku Professor, or one of my students, Kishimu-kun or Pencil Leopard, I will include it with your purchase, so don't miss out on that. And with that, I'm gonna get back to work on my biggest kaiju video I've ever done. Stay tuned, this Red King video is going to be epic. I'll leave you with this awesome art that was submitted by Arstron fan of an Operation game themed around Orphe from Ultraman Taro. Thank you for this awesome submission, Arstron fan. This has been the Toku Professor, signing off.